Hello everybody, Brad Johnson here, and in this video I'm going to be bringing in Adronis, and we are going to look into the year of 2020, and 2020 represents that of the year of exposure. So I will go ahead and bring Adronis in, and he will share some insight relating to our upcoming 2020 year. So here we go. We are here at this time, and we bid you greetings, and thank you for the opportunity of this interaction. I am Adronis of Sirius, sending love, appreciation, and gratitude to all who are tuning in to this transmission through your internet collective consciousness. We shall look into the perspective as you would understand as your 2020 year. Throughout this year, you will find a great deal of change manifesting exponentially upon your world. You will see things going a lot more quicker as it relates to your own potential manifestations. You will see the idea of webs connecting. You will see, again, further intensifications of truth embargoes, of disclosures happening in specific ways that often relate to the idea of internal matters, internal government affairs, the idea again of politicians, government officials coming out in states of exposure, basically attempting to create further sabotage relating to what you would term as elections and pre-elections as well too. And that many of the agendas relating to political power may actually be exposed relating to your mainstream news. The idea in that sense of specific committees contained within your governments. We are not just talking about your United States, but through several different countries. And that through this exposure that is taking place, this is leading the way to a new foundation, a new terminal of operation that will enable the dismantling, dissolving, and deceasing of these systems that were much more problematic and more so corrupt and more so doctrinated for the intention and purposes of selected individuals, groups, brought into power. So this again is continuing as it is throughout your 2019 year of disclosure year. And throughout much of this effect pertaining to your political system, this again is leading to, shall we say, new laws being written that represent much more ethical, in that way, procedures, ethical laws, as it were, pertaining to the idea of protecting rights of people, protecting rights of animals, protecting rights of nature. You will find in that sense much more of a necessity through many different forms of governmental, political, as well as personal groups and, shall we say, non-profit organizations operating to perform greater states of cleanup relating to areas that have been highly polluted, specifically in areas such as China, certain areas of the United States, certain areas of the United Kingdom, other areas of Europe. You could also look into areas of India as well too. The idea again of new systems coming online. The allure of solar plants, solar power, will become again much more of a alternative as it pertains to those other systems such as nuclear and coal and other forms of fuel energy systems are in the talks of being dismantled. You will actually notice that in Japan there will be much more discussion pertaining to the idea of completely closing down, or in that sense refurbishing the area of Fukushima, and talking about different forms of alternative power systems. This too may relate to the idea of solar energy. There is certainly an intention for new energy systems that even go through the alternatives to attempt to bring this forward upon the planet. However, there are still these particular obstacles relating to your power elite, and that they are doing everything they can to keep many of these particular forms of technologies under wraps. However, their own particular systems are also being attacked through what you would know in that sense as organizations that are basically utilizing certain forms of harsh pesticides that are in that sense attempting to contaminate food sources. These organizations are in the midst of going through a greater state of exposure. The same idea relates to those pertaining to environmental toxicity, environmental contamination, and those particular organizations are also on the brink of being exposed a great deal further. The idea of common whistleblowers will actually start to feel that they will have so much support behind them that even in the attempt of an arrest, they will have the opportunity to have the support of large groups that may lead into the idea of their relinquishing from that state of custody. It is also important to know, relating to what many of you term as extraterrestrials, other forms of contact happening within the 2020 year, that again there will be more drip-based disclosure taking place, shared more on your mainstream media, and again it will be newer material, but still around the same lines as it has been previously. So when we have talked about the 2019 disclosure year, we were not talking primarily about the idea of extraterrestrial disclosure, but the idea that there are drips happening. And this year of exposure will again be another drip year, but it will have larger drops. And so, as we stated, the year of 2020 could be seen as a second year of disclosure, but it is also a year of foundation. It is a year of exposure, and it is a year of foundation, which means that there are new establishments that are looking to be forged throughout a variety of different areas within your, shall we say, mainstream, such as reintegration of your governmental sectors in multiple countries, not just the United States. When we are talking about this, we are not just talking about your United States, we are not just talking about Canada, we are talking about a multitude of different countries. Because again, we aim to speak to much of the world, not just to your Western world. You will find again that the aspects of protests, of retaliations, will start to increase a lot more, specifically around the Middle East and around the areas of the western areas of Asia. There may also be, in that sense, certain forms of uproars taking place within your United Kingdom and in areas that are, in that sense, currently aligned to what you would term as the European Union. There will be, in that sense, more rattling of those cages, where there will be other volunteers, as it were, to unbranch themselves from the aspect of a controlling union. So this is also on the verge of happening and could manifest in 2020 or perhaps even 2021. Now again, just because it's another year does not mean that all of these things are happening. These all have momentum. This all has a certain principle of energy behind them that could manifest into 2020 or perhaps another year or two down the road. Right now it is all based upon timing. It is all about the idea of these organizations and those that are looking to instigate change within these internal organizations, government, politics, financial, education levels, energy technology, etc. For all of them to wait for the right moment to allow this to come together. It's like looking at the tide and waiting for that tide to come in. And when that tide comes in, now these ideas can be implemented. These countermeasures can be integrated into the mesh of society. We again are stating to you that everything that is transpiring within the year of 2020 mostly has to do with yourselves as the individual, but not looking so much into the idea of group mentality. You are looking at yourselves in the way that you can now build new establishments, new foundations, new territories, new ideas, new concepts. It is now the year for action planning. It is the idea to expose what is holding you back, preventing yourself from continual sabotage and aligning yourself into deeper alignments of foundation that are helping you to no longer feel that you are impaired by modernized systems. That you are now forming groups across your planet, and that many of you are indeed independent entrepreneurs, as you say. And the more that you decide to come together, the more that you are going to find that there is new liberation pertaining to your actions, through the idea of health and wellness, through the idea of assistance and therapy, counseling, through the idea of new medicines, through the idea of new helpful techniques on psychological, philosophical, and again, counseling levels that can assist the whole. It is about the idea of building these new organizations, less reliance on the old form of governments, less reliance upon the old sectors of control-based systems, letting them crumble. Do not feel that you are personally responsible for the dismantling of these systems. You are not. You have volunteered to play with these systems, but you have not in that sense created them. These systems were created by corrupt minds to instigate a state of control. And there will be an easing up of it on certain levels, because many of you talk about the idea of prosperity funding, or through the idea of Nasera or Gesera in that sense. We would say we are aware of no such thing. It's not to say that we are not aware about what you are talking about, but that is not something that is looking to come to pass. The closest aspect to that is what you would term as the universal basic income. And that may still be a short amount of time away, within the next couple of years, at least. Because again, as you start to move more into the states of automation, and one of the important things you'll look into 2020 is conversations pertaining to artificial intelligent creations, such as androids or robots in that way. That will become much more of a continual and intense discussion with many of you, because there are companies right now that are looking to build synthetic humanoids, you would say, and are looking to put them to work. Now again, this is going to be a few more years before this fully rolls out, but there will certainly be the preparation process of when this is happening. And that through the idea of your 2020, 2021, there will certainly be much more of an automation momentum that is taking place, where it relates to the idea of factories and warehouses and other particular forms of industrial work, to where these automated synthetic, shall we say, creations may be stationed. But again, as it starts to reach much more of a greater peak, and many companies are now starting to adopt automation, this will lead to a greater momentum, as you would refer to as universal basic income, where the idea of certain families receive a certain amount of wages. This also needs to come through the refurbishing of your own monetary system. As we have talked about for the past couple of years, it is most likely that this new system is going to come online more so in your early to mid 2020s. It will start to roll itself out much more in regards to the allure of the cryptocurrency systems. Because again, some of you indeed favor the cryptocurrency, some of you cannot stand it, but you will have it as an option. It is the idea that digital currency is pretty much taking over all that relates to the idea of currency overall on your planet in any way. But there are, in that sense, discussions, and there have been discussions for quite some time, relating to the rollout as it pertains to a legal tender, a backed money system. And that is indeed looking to happen, but it needs to come through a state of great cooperation. Because the idea of your banks will start to revert themselves into the idea of localized banking. And it will work more so to the idea of state or provincial banking in that way, where everything becomes much more independent, and in that sense, organic. That certainly is the bigger picture, but there needs to be several more steps ahead. Your banks must be exposed even further than they are right now. That has an opportunity to unfold in 2020, but in that sense, it could unfold a little bit more. Now, as Brad has spoken previously, is that it is not always wise for us to share exact predictions pertaining to this, because yes, a transmission like this is infiltrated, and that others can listen to what we are sharing and will do everything they can to try and assuage any particular form of these timelines from happening. So this is why we hold back somewhat to giving you more quote-unquote deeper specifications of predictions to prevent that from happening. There's a lot happening behind the scenes that is going to come to pass in 2020, and it has to do more with what you would term as takedowns of the idea in that sense of a game of chess between alliances, again facing off through what you would know as these cabals. But as we have stated, the dog will eat the dog. The corrupt will take down the corrupt. You are simply witnessing this in the background, and you will have no direct involvement with this, really. It's something that is happening behind the scenes. It is the idea that this is all happening in the shadows, and that you will see many of these particular states of exposure. You will see, again, many different forms of cover-ups, that someone in that sense has claimed that they have transitioned, that they have passed from their physical body, when in fact that's not the case. There is something else that's happening. So again, this is too, as it were, something that is going to transcend the idea of what you would know as your current systems of artificialized control. It is going to transcend those ideas. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of gears being turned. There's a lot of nuts and bolts being unscrewed, and greater nuts and bolts being put in place in exchange. So again, this year of exposure relates to further takedowns. Further, shall we say, operations happening in the shadows that are helping to take down many of these corrupt organizations that have been clamps, preventing many of these new systems from coming online, because that's really what's setting many of you back right now, are many of these remnants of elitists who, again, through their own workers, are trying to place these clamps, basically attempting to utilize their form of media that is still attempting to expose and feel that any other type of system other than themselves is not the way to go and would be the means of chaos. You will again see a lot more internet censorship as you move into this year. Again, a lot of this has to do with people working with their independent channels throughout your media and being censored, because new inventions, new rules, new forms of censorship will be brought up, and again, other particular channels that relate to these forms of exposures taking place, what you would refer to as alternative media, other forms in that sense of spiritual wellness and such. These could also be taken down, or at best censored in many different ways. So ensure that you are working together with the support, with those in that sense that are doing their work to bring you this information. Support them to the greatest ways that you can, because this is helping you to transcend past the current media in the mainstream. There are also works to attempt to sanitize the mainstream media. This is actually happening right now. This has been happening in this year of 2019. Where much of your media is in that sense attempting to be cleaned up. The idea in that sense of much of your mainstream is basically attempting to be refurbished. so it is no longer being owned by greed. And if this cannot happen, new channels will be established that will actually relate to journalism and not the idea of greed-based control and controlled sanitation and censorship throughout your news. This too is also being worked on. You have much to look forward to in this year. You have much to look forward to relating to this reestablishment of foundation. But what needs to happen first is exposure. And that's where this year of 2020, upcoming year we will say, is going to allow itself to take place. More exposure, more unrooting of corrupt matters, of contaminations. And the more that you all work together to uproot these particular forms of systems that you know within your heart you have no interest in involving yourselves with anymore, and you work together to create these people-powered organizations, this is what's going to take you a step ahead. Many of you are already starting to do this, and we are very happy to see this. Independent, non-profits, as you would say, organizations working together, helping to better your planet, developing new technology that will clean your oceans. Do not wait for your governments to do this. They will take a very, very long time, and even when they do decide to clean it up, it'll be very, very minute, because there's not that much business relating to cleaning up your planet. You have to do it. You have to create these organizations. You have to create these entities that are dedicated to cleaning up your oceans, cleaning up your air, cleaning up your land. In that sense, completely dealing with the idea of toxicity, landfills, etc. All of this needs to be done by the people, not your governments. This is what you're attempting to learn right now, is getting past the allure of these governmental systems. They have never really worked for you. Not really. It's always been based upon their own agendas, what works best for them. They are selfish-based systems. They don't work. So when you start to put your minds together, your hearts together, your bodies together, your actions together, you are going to see results. You're going to start cleaning up the planet. And by doing this, you're going to see a new world unfold, where there is going to be less natural destruction pertaining to hurricanes and floods and earthquakes, etc. Because you are now starting to clean up the planet. This is the reason why the planet is manifesting these particular types of earth changes on your planet. It's trying to get you to take action, to work together, to come together, to uproot contamination and build foundation that works together through humanity to create new systems, to create new operatives that again help to bring harmony to community. Cooperative neighborhoods, working together to supply food, working together to supply energy, working together to supply education. It goes on and on and on. You can do this. And if you truly take this message to heart, you will see incredible unfoldment taking place, because you're working together as a community. It's not one person's idea. Because now nothing can sabotage that, because the collective is working together. When you have a collective working together on these foundations, it cannot be sabotaged, because this collective will not be coerced by what is corrupt. They already know what's corrupt, and they are working to change it. And it is thanks to exposure that that is indeed possible. We thank you very much for the opportunity of this interaction. We will now conclude and return to the conduit. Goodbye for now. Okay, thank you very much everybody for tuning into this video. Again, I wanted to get this out for quite a while, but of course, everything is in good timing. I'm looking forward to the 2020 year, and we'll probably speak on this a lot more in future videos ahead. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you again in another perspective of the now. Take care.